Last in Line Nation, hey, welcome to another episode. Project 222 is kicking in hot and heavy today because we've got a big time heavy hitter guest today. And I'm excited because, I grew up in Oklahoma. So this is kind of near and dear to my heart to talk to an ex OU Sooner football player. So this is going to be awesome. As we talk about Project 222, though, in all seriousness, is really for ex-athletes who have been in the middle of the grind that you are as a current college athlete, and they know the tests, they know the pressures, they know the struggles, distractions. And so hopefully we're going to get some encouragement on what you guys can do practically, tactically, where you guys can strategize and kind of bond together and walk this thing out as believers in Christ on the college campus in a high profile role of an athlete. So I bring you today the Trey Millard. He is a legend in the Oklahoma football community. So Trey was a big 4-time all Big 12 selection, freshman All-American honorable mention, which is really huge if you can think about a blue blood program like Oklahoma. Voted captain 2 years, 2-time Big 12 champion, 2-time BCS bowl winner, drafted into the NFL in the 7th round by the 49ers. What was that, back in 13, 14?
14, yeah.
14, okay, yeah. So he's also stayed connected with Sooner Athletics, being a media personality with Sooner Vision, OU's media outlet. He is currently involved in medical sales right now, orthopedics specifically, and is a very active member in his church with his wife and kids. Wife Abby, who is due in November with their 3rd son, and then two little guys, Lucas and Kaysen. So, man, I couldn't be more honored and privileged to welcome Trey Millard to the show.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to hop on here and talk a little Jesus, a little bit of football with you.
That's right, man. Couldn't be a better grouping, Jesus and football, OU football to be specific.
Yeah.
But I'm in South Texas, so I got to watch myself for a second. Got to be neutral here. No.
Yeah.
But no, you played with OU, 2010 to 2013, I think. Played with some greats and played under one of the greatest, Bob Stoops. And man, Trey, I told you kind of off air what we were going to do today, and it's a little bit off script, and you kind of have to be the guinea pig on something for me. We're going to do a quick lightning round so the audience can kind of get to know you and your personality. And I call it, so you're going to enlighten us, and it's the N lightning round.
Yeah.
So these 3 categories are going to start with the letter N. All right.
Yeah.
So we're going to go fast and furious here. Nutrition. What is your favorite food? And tell us why.
Super healthy. Dumpling, essentially cooked with flour. It's called Slickers. It's my grandma's made it. It's a homemade recipe that me and my wife got in a couple of fights early on in our relationship because she couldn't figure out how to cook it, and she's the cook in our house, and I don't know how to cook it, but she had to get notes, and there's obviously there's no recipe to it, but I love it. It's my favorite.
I mean, I guess in marriage counseling, whenever they ask what's the key contributor to your arguments and dysfunction, you to say Slickers, I don't think they would understand, but I get what you're saying, man. I mean, Did she figure it out though? Has she figured it out?
Yeah.
Oh,
she's got it. Now she cooks them with the kiddos, and it's a big hoopla, and they love it too. So
give me context. So you're from Missouri, am I right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that where your family still is, and that's where this tradition kind of happened, this recipe? I've never heard of this.
Yeah, so most of my family's from St. Louis, and then I was born and raised in Columbia, just west, 2 hours right where the university's at. And I'm not really sure where the recipe originally comes from. My family's from Croatia, and
cool.
that side of the family who makes that, and I guess we can say it's from there because it sounds cooler.
That's awesome.
Being something, I guess, from around here. But yeah, it's great. My grandma made them, and we always tease my mom that hers tastes better because there's more love in them. But
there you go. Be careful there. Be careful. Yeah. Well, I can tell you it won't be on any keto diet coming to a theater near you.
No,
I can promise you. All right. So the next one here, let's get fast and furious. So nuisance. This is interesting. So being a football guy, who was the biggest nuisance to play against, team or individual?
Kind of similar to the the teams nowadays, Kansas State was always tough, man. They were a tough team to play. They're always well coached. Weren't going to make a ton of mistakes, and so as they've got our number the last couple of years, they were tough. They stole one from us at home when I was playing as a junior. So they were always kind of a tricky team.
Don't bring that up. Don't bring that up. No, I hear you. And, Bill Snyder's been known to just kind of bore you to sleep. And before you know it, you're 2 touchdowns down to a team that isn't sexy on paper. Right. But I hear what you're saying. So a nuisance, we got Kansas State. Okay. Anybody there though, in your time that was just rough, just to play against any one of their players that you remember that stood out to you on any of those Kansas State teams that beat you guys?
No
big names really ever for them, was there? Not a whole. I mean, other than Darren Sproles, right, and Kevin Love.
Yeah, there's a couple kids from Baylor who I really didn't really like their personalities.
Okay,
more of that.
Okay,
but I was taught from a coach at one point to always just say their numbers, not names. He's just like, so it's like there's
nothing personal, right?
Yeah, don't ever remember them too much. Don't ever think about them too deep. And I was just actually scared, kind of, in some of the press conferences when talking about the teams we were going to play like the next week. I was always scared they were going to talk about some big time player who I should know their name, and I'd always just be like, "Oh, you mean number 12? Like, you mean number this? Like, that's all,
right?
Oh, strong safety. That's what you're talking about. Like, that's how I just try and remember them. I'm just,
that's pretty cool. No, that's a good way to look at it. Definitely. So the last one here for the ends on the end lightning round, getting to know Trey Millard here. It's the third one is never. So I've never done this, but would love to.
So just because we're talking about, faith and all that, I've never really given a full like sermon. Not like, so I've spoken at our church a bunch, spoken at FCA a bunch. I've done like the full 30 minutes that's like with a group where I've came up and given my testimonial,
right.
But I've never been like, hey, like bulletproof thesis of a sermon, verses to back up theology, and delivered it for like talking 30 minutes in a row. And that actually terrifies me. But I've been talking to my pastor this morning, and that's what kind of thought came to mind is he's been wanting me to do a little bit of that, and it's nerve-wracking, but I'd definitely like to.
It is. I'd love to hear how that goes, because I'm no doubt you'll be able to do it multiple times coming soon. All right, man. So we're going to dive in, man. We're talking about Project 222 is the name of this, and it's out of 2 Timothy 2:2, and it's all about building and investing in people. And where Paul's talking to Timothy, he says, take what I've taught you, teach it to faithful men so that they can teach others also. And so things that you learned going through in one of the biggest, highest profile football programs in the country, and being a prominent contributor to that team, of course, man, there's a lot of things I'm sure you saw, had to deal with, had to overcome, had to press in and lean in and press through. So, man, let's start off with mentors and leaders that you were around, that you were able to maybe pull a couple things from and adopt as your own down the road. But talk about some of those people and what made you gravitate to them as leaders.
The first is Landry Jones, who was quarterback there for the year before I got there, and then 3 years, my freshman through junior year. He was kind of the guy in the locker room who set up Bible studies, who invited guys to come share the word, talk about what was on their hearts. Also spent just time, just the two of us, talking about faith and things like that. And so definitely a strong mentor for me, especially early on, of kind of staying kind of locked in and kind of focusing on other things more than just football and school, which is, what you're there to do for the most part. And so definitely a guy kind of help keep perspective and help lead that locker room and that kind of group of guys. And so definitely thankful for him. Kent Bowles, who's the guy who connected us, who's a chaplain there, who has had some tumbles afterwards, but God's continued to work some incredible things in his life. And so we're still very close and still help out with some of the things that he's got going on in the faith, and kind of rededicated my life with him when we were doing some things I think we'll talk about a little bit later. But so him as a chaplain, being close, he's also kind of leader of the FCA group. And so
Mhm.
him and Jeremy Timms was another FCA guy in the area. We're all great leaders that on the faith side of things
Yeah.
for
So, okay, so you and a couple or maybe a lot of other guys kind of hung together, connected, stayed kind of common in those like-minded, um, areas of just faith. But what's the one leadership quality you show now, or that you've adopted from some of those guys, that one or two leadership qualities that's made you a good leader?
um I think part of it's just kind of putting yourself out there, right? Like, I mean, right now that we're in the sales role, we kind of feel that of not being afraid to fail, not being afraid to have people tell you no.
Mm,
And when they do, don't take it as a forever, right? Take it as a right now.
mm,
I've kind of really stepped out, really even in the last handful of years of reaching out to guys who I'm friends with and kind of encouraging their church and things like that, where it's on a personal level with friends that I'm close to or having some hard times and some things, and who I knew used to be close to the church, and just kind of going out there and be, hey, like,
mm.
how are you? Like, what's going on? Not always trying to beat them over the head with the Bible or anything. Just like, hey, I love you. I'm here for you. How can I help you? And a lot of times if they are really struggling, they'll ask me how I get through similar situations or how I have. And that's kind of the chance that you get to kind of talk about the church and the fellowship and people that you have in your life. And obviously talk about what your relationship with Jesus is like and how there's solid ground and sturdiness there, and how whatever their situation is, how you kind of deal with it, with how your relationship is with the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. I mean, it sounds like you kind of have to be a little bit bold in some of your evangelism, and just kind of step out, like you said. And I mean, I think being a college athlete, kind of allows you to have a little bit of that courage that maybe some of those other folks may not, and that X factor within you that, what, I've been hit in the head. I've run through a hole where there was no hole, and I'm not really worried about talking to somebody and asking them to come to church. That's a small thing to me to be afraid of. So that's cool that you pressed through that. I mean, what, kids nowadays, if that's who our audience is, the ones that are there now playing, and I'm sure you're still connected with, you're still around the program and you're involved. But what's kind of the main struggle or challenge you're seeing with them now? I mean, you're not real far removed, but again, it's been a little while since you've been there. What's the biggest challenge for those athletes that are trying to maintain their faith?
I think it's more so even when I was there that some of these kids are put on this pedestal, and they've got this direct access with social media to things that um, was just really becoming a thing when I was there, and so the outside influence is easier. It's louder. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Everybody thinks that you ought to listen to them, and just for those guys that are in those locker rooms, a lot of times they're the minority.
Yeah.
Even in a place like Oklahoma, where you think Bible Belt, um, it's I think there's a lot of attacks, especially on college campuses,
Mm-hmm.
on some of the Christian values, and so these guys are a lot of times in hostile environments that used to not be, and so they've got and they're expected to be a voice, and there's a lot of times whenever you're expected to be a voice, people always think that you need to say whatever they're saying, and so these guys definitely have a lot of things going on, and a lot of outside influences that are coming in that they've got to deal with, and they've got to kind of either find something inside of them or some other group of guys, and listen to make sure to listen to the right people and the right things, and really focus on that, and let go of some of the other stuff that's coming from the outside.
It is. Yeah. And I would imagine there's probably, I mean, I've experienced this myself, but I can imagine maybe sometimes you feel like you're leading a split life, where in the locker room, you may feel like you got to kind of conform to that environment, right? And then you come out and you go to FCA meeting and you're this guy. And I
Yeah.
get that. I understand that that's human nature sometimes, but you have any encouragement for someone like that might be standing straddling that fence and feeling tugged between two worlds, like how to be an influencer in that environment of a locker room where they feel like you said, hostile territory in the minority, but how can they maybe influence that environment versus vice versa?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you for myself, it's just kind of my own journey. I wasn't always in strong in my faith in college, and I made a lot of
Mm.
mistakes. And when I was towing that line, a lot of times it did feel very kind of hypocritical, right? Like you were just, I think the Christian faith is one of a little bit of hypocrisy because we're aiming after Jesus and none of us get there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we all fall short, and a lot of people try to poke that at us, that like, hey, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
important to give yourself some grace and mercy, that Jesus died for you, and that God's given you that grace and mercy too. And know that it's okay to be mad and upset at yourself or something like that, but then or stuck in some of that sin, but then know that it's also not okay for you to stay there, and know that it's more about the journey than it is about any kind of I don't want to say that kind of that faith moment or something isn't important, but definitely the journey with God, walking hand in hand, that relationship is what Christianity is all about. And so there's going to be days that you lose, that you know that you had bad, that you didn't do well, you didn't live up to what your own expectations and what God expectations are for you, but know that you just got to work on them. I think that the transition for me is one thing that always helped me kind of less so that I did in college, that I did more in the professionals, is that in pro ball, you see guys jump around constantly, right? So there's a lot more transition week to week, day to day. I always just kind of thought and was challenged for my pro career because people would always come in, ask about this person, ask about that person. I was like, when somebody asks about me, are they, is one of the first things that somebody says is that I'm a Christian, or I'm, salt of the earth is what a lot of people say,
Oh
or
yeah.
things like that. And it's like, that was really a challenge for me to make sure that the things that I'm talking about, the things that I'm engaging in, things I'm excited about in the locker room are things that show my values and my faith, and that so much so that without walking up to people and say, hey, my name's Trey, I'm a Christian, people just know that about me because of the way that I'm living my life, and so I was challenged with that definitely more later on in my football career, and something that I kind of wish I'd done a little bit earlier.
That's a real good answer. I like that because I think you're speaking to a vast group of people when you talk about you weren't perfect, you felt like you were towing the line, and you really, I mean, we're always striving to be more like Jesus, but of course no one's ever going to get there. And so sometimes I think people feel like they've got this inflated view of what their life as a Christian is supposed to look like. And then when they don't hit that, right, then they just kind of throw the towel and they say, well, I can't do this. But what you're saying I like, because you're saying it's just progression and it's a journey. Was there, so you said you weren't necessarily always in that, in the boat, and always in that kind of living the example. Uh, was there a moment through your college career that you, maybe the light went on? Was there something that happened, or was there just a moment in the mirror where you had to get real with yourself and make a decision? Okay, I'm either going to do this or I'm not. Like, what was that for you?
Yeah, so I kind of always grew up in the church. I'd say a lot of it in high school and beforehand was kind of, my mom's faith that I was just kind of tagging along for, running her coat strings for. Like I felt like this was always something that, I was going to be a Christian and yada yada, but I wasn't really taking it. It wasn't mine, so to
Yeah.
speak. And so we, after my sophomore year, went on a mission trip to Haiti, and Kent was on that. Kent Bowles was on that trip. And throughout that, I just at the end of that trip, I kind of rededicated myself, my life to Jesus. And I wish even from then it would have been a 180, right? Where it's just like all those bad habits take a while to kill sometimes. And so I just had a new, much more personal. It was my walk. It was my relationship with Jesus, and He was in my life personally for me versus kind of I was in it for someone else or this or that. So it was that I was definitely kind of a turning point for me, and it's been a long road since then of continuing that journey. But yeah, that'd be the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah, that's good. And I'm, not to put words in your mouth, but I guess I would assume you would tell somebody who maybe doesn't have the luxury of going on a mission trip, right? Or hasn't been there. But what you're saying is, it had to become, you had to own it. Like
Yeah,
your faith had to be yours. You had to put your stamp on it. You had to grab a hold of it and jump in with both feet as being your faith, your relationship. Because, we know that this walk in our Christian life is about a relationship and not about religion, right? It's not about rituals and those kinds of things. So, yeah, to have the relationship, you sort of have to engage in any relationship. So like you made it your own. And I like what you said, because I think there are people now that are struggling with that. Like they went to church their whole life and now they're in college. Right. And their parents, set the right example. They got them in the right environments, and now they're off. They're out of the nest. Right. But they feel disconnected because they haven't done what you just said, and taken ownership of their faith. And what was that? I mean, is that a process? Would you tell somebody, or is that something that you just, it's just as simple as making a choice to walk it out?
I mean, I think it's different for everybody. I mean, right?
Right.
Jesus is so much that he's different to everybody, and
Sure.
everybody's relationship with him is unique, and that's one thing that's special about God and how he chooses to enter us. And one thing that's so important about fellowship and being around other people is that it's kind of like God's an ocean, and we all took
Yeah.
a different cup in the ocean. And
Oh
so
yeah.
when you get together, you can see what what God's done in other people's life, or maybe he's the good father to somebody, and maybe he's the provider, and maybe he's security to somebody
Hmm.
else in ways that he hasn't been in my life, that he's going to be different in other people's life. And just seeing how he um, blesses those who in different ways, and seeing just the fullness of God, and something we can't compare even with a fellowship and group around us, but we can see more of him through more people that we've got around him. And I think kind of your point that there's definitely an ownership that comes with leaving high school, being kind of out on your own in football and in athletics. A lot of people kind of find that first semester, right? They come
Hmm.
out, they're no longer the guy, right? Especially at OU, like you
Sure.
don't make
Oh
the
yeah.
OU without really being the guy in high school. Um, and so a lot of people go through that originally. It's almost an identity crisis, right? We're
Right.
we're kind of put and focused so much on football. Society tells us that we're football players, right? We're not student athletes, or we're athletes first, no questions about it. And so I didn't really hit that, but I've seen a lot of other guys struggle with that, and I've seen guys who've made millions of dollars, and then now that they're 38 and have made so much money, they still are struggling with not being a football player anymore.
Yeah.
And I was kind of blessed a couple times in my career to kind of go through some injury where my faith wasn't strong after my freshman year, even though had all the success in the world, where my life seemed extremely dark, where I wasn't doing football, deal with a lot of depression, anxiety, and things like that, to where it happened as a senior and lost a ton of money. And one injury went from being, I'm going to for sure get drafted, I'm number one
Yeah.
fullback in the country for 2 years,
Right.
and now I may not get drafted at all, um, and being way more content in that loss in that second uh, injury than I was in the first, just because I knew that my anchor was in the Lord, and that I was a Christian, and that he was going to have me no matter what. And if I'd played my last snap of football, then I guess what's next, right? Because I knew at some point that was going to happen. It was his timing, and he kind of humbled me down and be like, all right, Lord, like this is yours. This is your career. I'd love to keep playing football, but it's I'm giving myself away to you. This isn't my identity. This isn't who I am. Do with it as you please.
Yeah.
And those two different mindsets, and those two different relationships with Jesus, really not having one, and with being surrounded by him and being anchored to him, just completely changed a very similar situation.
Yeah. I mean, the guy you're talking to right now, when you mentioned the 38-year-old who had all the success in sports and all the money, but still can't wrap their brain around the fact that they were defined by who they were as a player, and
Yeah.
not a person or a Christian or whatever. But so that person that's sitting here now that could be that guy in, 20 years, I would hope a light goes on with them. And I would hope that, because we have a lot of people that are in that it's not going to happen to me syndrome kind of thing. So nobody thinks they're going to get injured. I mean, nobody expects that. Of course, you can't predict it, but man, there ought to be a contingency. And there also ought to be kind of one of those things that drives you or defines you more than that. And like you
Yeah.
said, like you knew the second time, like if I get hurt, my life isn't over, because there's way more to me than what helmet I'm wearing. And so I hope somebody hears that. I hope somebody gets it. And we're not saying don't strive to go, crazy and play 20 years in the NFL. Like that's awesome. That go
Yeah.
do that. But I think, let your foundation be your foundation and be in the right place. So
Yeah, if
good
that's all
advice.
it is, if that's all it is for you, is football and this or that, your life's not, it's never going to like complete you or make you feel fulfilled or whole. It's still a game, and I think it's the best game in the world, but it's still not your life's purpose.
Yeah. And I hope we didn't steal the next question because it sounds like we might
Uh-oh.
be going into that. But if you were, so I ask everybody this, and I wonder what you would say, but to yourself, sitting across the table from you, from yourself as a incoming freshman to Oklahoma, University of Oklahoma as a football player, what do you wish somebody would have told you about the experience and then maybe just about life in general? So what would you wish kind of you would have had a little bit of a heads up on, or advice you would give yourself if you were sitting across from yourself?
I think they're kind of somewhat similar. My answer is just I feel like I wasted a lot of time in college with shallow things that weren't going to last, whether it be relationships, activities, like
Yeah.
um, just people who I knew I wasn't gonna be with friends with for very long, or going out to the bars all the time, or this or that. Like none of those memories like are really that good 3 or 4 years past, right? It's all empty, it's all shells, it's not really anything that's lasting. And so I know, and I wish I wouldn't have wasted so much time doing those kind of things. And I wish I would have, in retrospect, done a lot more time um, using the platform that I was given to go out and speak and change, do more FCAs and do, talk to more churches and do camps and this or that. And so definitely that's one I don't, it is a regret that I didn't do that. And I wish I would have told myself beforehand that, some of these friends that you're spending time with are just shallow, and even people that are really close to you are just close to you because of football, and it can even be teammates and this or that. It's just um, make sure those relationships are built around other things,
Yeah.
and that those people are helping lift you up and are real friends. And it's hard to tell. It really is, and um, it's one of the hardest things, and especially if you're looking for a spouse. In the midst of all that, it can be pretty terrifying. But just make sure that you guys are circled and surrounded by something that's not just football and that's not things of the world, because all that stuff perishes.
Yeah. Yeah. And being an athlete to that level in that on that campus and many other campuses throughout the country, you don't know who, like you said, you don't really know who you can trust, who your real friends, because there's people that are just, they put you on this, you're this superhero, right? You're this untouchable, this athlete, this superstar. And so you just don't know. And so I'm glad you said that, because I hope there's a criteria that people can use when they're filtering relationships, filtering entertainment, filtering, just that one split second of gratification, maybe that, man, could either become a regret or just become fleeting and vanish the next moment. So yeah, do something, what you're saying, do something and invest in the things that have longevity, and even, eternal value, more
Yeah.
importantly. Man, it's been good stuff. I have one more for you,
Okay.
and I'm gonna have you complete a sentence for me. Um, I know I made an impact in the lives of my teammates because.
So this one probably goes more, I'd say not necessarily just faith wise, but I'd say because of the way the guys talk to me, that we've talked since football. And what I mean by that is I just had lunch with a guy the other day who was one of the guys I'm kind of sharing faith with again and this and that. But he always just talks about uh, how much I cared about um, just the program, and how much of a leader I was as far as making sure that everybody around us was doing the right things on the football field, and the passion that I played the game, and just knowing that like getting to become a captain was a big deal. And that those guys always talk about how not only how I played, but how I practiced and how I kind of lived the football player that I was. And so um, I think people have kind of seen that I just care and have that passion, and just like I said, going back, I wish more of it. I would have been more vocal, more out about the things, and had some things more figured out in my own life, because I think I could have used that impact more for Christ. But um, that's in the past now, and just kind of have to live with that. But I know that I gained a lot of respect with players, whoever I see, just not only in my talent, because you can't always choose how much talent you have, but and the work ethic that I had, and not just the work ethic, but just never being late, never missing a mental assignment, always being on top of my game and make sure I didn't let other guys down on the team.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, so, when you're talking, and I can hear it in your voice when you say some of the things you wish you might have done different, and, even the regret word. But uh, I mean, I think it's relatable to know people when they hear what you say. I think it's relatable to them, and it's tangible to look at you and go, well, okay, I mean, he made mistakes, and it's not excusing or giving somebody a pass to just go live. And then later you can say, oh, I wish I hadn't have done that. But it's one of those things that could potentially empower somebody to go, okay, starting now, like, I know I wasn't perfect. I know I'm still not, and I never will be, but starting now, I can take steps in the right direction. I can make those changes. Right. And I can just go a different way. So I think it's good for people to hear that from you.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's obviously you still talk to him, but you never know who's watching either. Like,
Yeah.
some of the people you may not have sat at the lunch table with every day, might have still, if I called them right now, whoever they are, probably would have memories of you, just like you described, saying work ethic, always on time, always encouraging, doing what he's supposed
Yeah.
to do, keeping his
You're
head down.
you're building a legacy, and just knowing that that part of my legacy was just the way that I cared about my teammates and cared about that team, but just knowing that it could have been more. In some cases, it was more, but knowing that I had more opportunities that where it could have been, and just telling guys now that are in those positions that the legacy that you're going to pass on to your kids, and that you're going to have for wearing that uniform, it's getting built every single day in your decisions, and what you do on a Friday night, Saturday night, and what you do on a Sunday morning, all right, or Wednesday night at church, and this or that. So
Yeah.
those decisions and that legacy is getting built, whether or not you want it to, or whether or not you're doing it the way that you want to. It's still going to get a legacy is still going to get built. You're going to get remembered for who you were as a football player at the University of Oklahoma, or wherever you're at. And if you're not an athlete, you're still building a legacy right now, right? Like, this I know this podcast is aimed at athletes and college athletes, that but really everyone. I'm building a legacy right now for my kids in the industry that I'm in. Or I mean, as are you, and as with this podcast, right? We're all building these little legacies, and we're going to get up to heaven one day, and it's all going to be up there. And I always kind of have this when I'm speaking. People ask about some of the things. I'm like, if all I'm known for is when I get to heaven is football, it's like, what a completely wasted life. Like, if you're sitting around a campfire in heaven and you're talking about the earth and what you guys did in your previous life, which I don't know if that's a real scenario or not, but it's like,
Right.
I'm not going to go talk to somebody who planted 1,000 churches and saved 1 million lives and be like, hey, remember that one play I had at Texas? Like, it just fails in comparison to know the internal gratitude of what happens for the kingdom is what really, really matters. And so football is just at the end of the day a tool that I go back to now in my career, and my name, which is just kind of silly. It's like if I played any other sport in the state of Oklahoma, like if I was a fencer or this or that, like, it wouldn't have mattered. Like, so it's just thanking God for the opportunity to give me this platform, and knowing that it's my responsibility back to him for those talents and those gifts to give it back to him, all to him.
Yeah, man. Good. Well said. And man, for that 18, 19-year-old that's listening, and it's hard for them to wrap their brain around it. I mean, I get it. You feel good, you're a superstar right now, but hopefully what Trey has said has kind of kept you a little grounded and forced you to look a little bit closer at yourself and get some different perspective on something down the road, and not just what's in front of you right now, because we can all get locked into that laser vision and just not seeing, outside of where we are right now. But know that those moments matter, and know that someone's always watching. And man, Trey, on behalf of the audience, I mean, I really appreciate you making time. It's been great to hear from you. It's great to hear your heart, and to see, you be transparent about who you were and who you sort of became along the journey, which shows growth. And so, audience, I hope that was a blessing. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. Until next time, he's been Trey Millard, and we've been Last in Line. Be blessed.
Bye.